And now a message from our friends at Fetching Food.
The 1970s and 80s had Elbow, Gravy Train, Purina, Meow Mix, and Bell Bottoms. You've changed your clothes, now change how you feed your pet. Like Bell Bottoms, kick the kibble and join us in the 21st century with the healthiest diet for dogs and cats. Feed naturally, feed raw, feed Fetching Foods.
Groomer Next Door podcast.
I'm a storyteller by trade.
You're a writer?
Well, I'm a podcaster.
What on earth is that?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at you. You're fantastic. Podcast is kind of like it's like a radio show that's not on the radio. It's on the internet. Does that make sense?
Hello, pups and kittens, and honestly, I don't. I could blame a bunch of people, but they're all cats and dogs, and I guess that's probably the direction we'll go. We're going to actually just say it's Oliver's fault. No, I'm just kidding. What had happened was I had planned, or I guess you could say uploaded, everything for this particular episode to go up. And, well, I was out of town, and I loaded everything through my phone that was already in the cloud, and it turned out that an episode of Honey Licks took the place of Lowell Kaufman, and I absolutely, completely apologized for this. It was, one of those, huh? kind of moments. So, I contacted Lowell and said, hey, I am really sorry. Apparently your episode was lost somewhere in the cloud and detached. I can't find it. So, is it okay if we actually sit down and re-record? And he was absolutely a gentleman and an amazing person. And, it reinvents the reason why I actually like this guy and what he's done. He created an app for the phone that, honestly, every pet parent should have. Well-Informed Pet is probably the only app that really gives all of your pet's information for medical and everything else, and it's right there. We listen to podcasts on our phones. We listen to radio on our phone. We watch movies on our phone. We read books off of our phone. Why don't we have our pets' information? When you go to a boarding facility, a trainer, a vet, all these are very massive, especially if you're changing vets and you move. That's pretty much one of the reasons why. So, without further ado, I wanted to actually welcome in a really gentleman, an amazing person, Lowell Kaufman, to the podcast, A Well-Informed Pet.
Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
All right. I have to say it because, you know what? I've always made this comment. I own up to everything that I make mistakes, and I am human. This week, and a special edition, we have Lowell Kaufman come back. He is the inventor of Well-Informed Pet. We were supposed to have him on a couple weeks ago, and for some reason, and I have no idea, his interview and all of our information went away. So thank you very much for being understanding, Lowell, for coming back and doing this, and just having some fun with us again.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And things, as you say, things happen. So thanks for owning up.
Hey, you know what? Like I told you before we even started, I am the one person out there that would rather own his shortcomings and mistakes than any of the accolades. I really seriously lived my life under this, and I think it's the right thing to do in life, and I really appreciate you being so understanding, and being into tech, you understand how really precious this kind of data is. It goes away quickly. You don't know why.
Yes, and I understand how things can suddenly disappear. That happens.
Oh, what? Before we even get started with all that you've been doing, why does it disappear like this? I mean, we make so much and it goes poof, and you're like, where'd it go? And it does. It goes by.
Right. Well, it exists somewhere, probably, because you can usually recover a file somehow. But it's so easy to just, make one of those like, oh, I pressed the wrong button, I overwrote a file, and that's technology. I mean, even if you're not a technologist, you screw up by pressing something wrong on your remote control, and you record over a show or whatever. It's as we have more information and technology is more complex, even as we try to make things easier to use, it's also easier to make mistakes with things.
It's so strange. And, it's always funny, and I think we even talked about it before. I always go, well, let's roll some tape, and yet we don't actually record on tape anymore. It's all digital. But it's more fun to say, hey, let's put this on tape. Well,
we're showing our age.
Well, yes. Yeah, but I still miss the feel of anything that tape and, go back to a regular cassette tape. Don't you miss those things? Except.
Oh, I still have a lot of them. I mean, I used to write and record a lot of songs, and I'm actually right here in my office. I still have piles of my old cassettes here, though I can't really play them.
Right.
I'm trying to convert them to MP3 now. So.
Oh boy, that's always fun. But there's nothing more fun than a pencil and a cassette tape and rewinding them. So nothing better. Well, let's talk about Well-Informed Pet. And I loved, and I still remember it. I still remember your origin story, and I still to this day think, and I'm sure things have changed a little bit on the way you actually tell the story. Obviously, the story doesn't change, but the way that you tell it's different. Tell us how it all came about.
Yeah, so, the origin itself is still the origin. Basically the idea started because, my dog Kona is a rescue poodle mix, and she had some health issues. And basically we were vacationing with her upstate, my wife and I. She needed to see a vet. I didn't have her health history, and it was just more of a pain than it should have been. The software engineer in me was like, why isn't this stuff in the cloud and online for me? Just like you'd want your own, not that you can get your own health history that easily all the time, but it's the same concept. And I was just like, we got to change that. And it evolved into what we really are doing with Well-Informed Pet. Yes, you can store all your information online about your pet, but when you think about the life of your pet, and I saw it with Kona as well, so many caretakers, so many people take care of your pet that you aren't always around with. And stuff happens when you're not with your pet too, and you want to have access to that information. You want your caretaker to have access to that information. So ultimately what we're really doing is building that trust and collaboration between you as a pet parent and all of your pet's caretakers. And pets, being like children now, have a lot of different people who take care of them.
Very
That's really ultimately what we're trying to do in the app.
And, it's funny because I remember, and again, I told you, last time we talked was in March, and it's so funny because I have never stopped thinking about your app and thinking how there is no other app out there. There is no other possible way of gathering information and having it where we have our books, we have our TV shows, we have our movies. And, it's like, duh, why don't we have all this stuff? I mean, it just didn't make sense until you put that into my brain, and it's never left.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of obvious because then you think about your own real experiences with your pet, and you think about different times that it's like, yeah, I just moved. I don't have her health records when you go to a new vet, or, oh, someone's taking care of your pet. Well, you may not have thought about it before, and then when you do, you always want to know what's going on. And to be fair, there's technologies out there that do something like what we're doing in some sense. I mean, they have video camera, webcam, so you can see some activity. But the idea of, I really emphasize that aspect of collaboration and trust, and the information one would need to be able to enable that. And yeah, I would agree that that really isn't what other technologies are doing when it comes to that kind of stuff. And again, it translates across many lines. While I mentioned the origin story with my pet, I had been thinking about it in terms of people health too, and caretaking in general. and the need is there regardless. We have a version for horses with our app too, Well-Informed Horse, for example. Same thing. You're not around your horse as a horse owner, and you have many caretakers, and you want to know what's going on, and you want to have them know what's going on as well. So yeah, it's kind of obvious when you think about the things you don't realize how much you're concerned or worried about it until you're actually concerned and worried about it. And that's really the gist of it.
You know what else has really popped in my head, and again, I don't know of any other apps that are doing it, and maybe it's because your app and being able to talk to you has put me into that one. There is no other option, but the interesting part for me is even thinking about two little simple things, and that is boarding your dog or cat, and you have to have records. Sometimes people don't have them right there with them. Well, if you have it on your phone, you can easily show them. Here it is right here. They're up to date on all of it. And that's a big thing. Huge. And also there's some
I think it makes things really simple. You're right. And one of the first things you can do in your profile of the app is to upload some kind of health certificate. And, in the case of my vet, you get a PDF, you put it in the cloud basically in the app, and then you have it available to show easily along with what other, it's easily accessible, and it's safe, and it's there. When we travel with our pet, you have that record available. So it is a very good use case and a very simple use case to just have it all. Here's all the shots, and you usually get it in one form. And if you don't get it in one form, you can still have it because you can just keep storing whatever it is you need, and the most recent ones, the most relevant ones will be what's available.
And it makes sense. I mean, for any pet parent, this is the easiest thing to have. And as you're listening to this podcast, you're listening to it most likely off of your phone. I mean, we do everything off of our phone now. And so I'm thinking, even back in March, but now more and more and more as I, go through the process, I'm like, wow, I mean, it's a no-brainer kind of thing.
And in addition, I mean, I use it myself. I mean, I was the first customer, so to speak. My wife and I, we were, we showed it to our groomer, and we showed it to our boarder, and then even just walking down the street, and someone asks about. It's so easy to show the app to other people, like at the dog park, for example. When I'm, I can scroll through something. It's just there, and it's not. Even at this early, it's still an early stage product. Let's face it. But even at its early stage, it's not hard to upload a document.
No.
We're starting to look at integrating with other automated systems like veterinarian health systems and getting more technical, and those kinds of things are happening. It takes a while to do all of that accurately. But even so, so it's even more automation down the line. But for now, even in this early state, it's not hard to upload a document. You do it all the time anyway. Now you're just uploading it into a place that has the availability, the searchability, and the accessibility, and the ability to comment on it too, or other people to comment on it. And I think, again, that flow of collaboration ends up being something powerful, when you start using it and when you start seeing it.
And I just think it's brilliant. So what were the difficulties that you experienced when you were developing the app?
The difficulties were really about, making sure that we were prioritizing the right things first, and everybody has a different opinion about that, but the real priority of get the most important profile information and get a document in there was like step one, and then making sure that people can actually share that information. So really prioritizing it was probably the most challenging thing. And as I mentioned earlier, from a business perspective, I started doing this for horses first because people steered me in that direction. So that idea of are we doing this in a way where if the horse thing is not as viable as we thought initially, because so much of doing a startup is an educated crapshoot. You're not necessarily going with blinders on at all, but you also, because it's new and transformational is the idea, you're really not sure what will take. So the first phase of doing it for horses, making sure that if we have to go to our eventual goal of doing it for household pets, it's not going to be hard to do. So making sure we build it and architect the software in a way that's reusable and easy to do. And we did need to make that pivot because while horse owners liked our horse version of this app, the people who they rely on, trainers and stable owners and people like that, didn't really like this app because it was too much transparency. You're seeing too much about the horse, and they, in their business, don't want to share that kind of information too readily. And it would have taken too long to educate that audience for me to make it worthwhile. So it took only a few extra weeks to really go back to the household pet version. So that's number one. And then the second hard thing is really understanding what people care about with this app. And so, yes, people, when you talk about it, people care about the idea of having their health information centralized and in one place. But saying that doesn't resonate immediately in some user studies that we did. What they had said was, yeah, that we get it, but it's not on my mind. It's only on your mind when you need it. When something like what happened with Kona, where I needed her health history and it was handy, that's when you start thinking, why don't I have this? But most people aren't thinking that way.
It is true.
But what they do care about is I don't trust my pet with anybody else. Mm-hmm. So that's where the idea of we already have built the product with a functionality where caretakers are sharing information, that really does build trust because you're having that dialogue, you're seeing what's going on. And in the near future, one of the next things we want to build in this app is kind of like an automated checklist of the things you care about when you leave your pet with someone else, and then you get notified when those tasks get done. So it's not in the app yet, but it's going to be in our next release, basically, for doing that kind of thing. And that just builds more trust because you're trusting the caretakers. And that's important as more and more dog walking services are out there and the boarding services are growing and pet sitter industry is growing. So from a business perspective, as well as obviously from a customer perspective, we think those kinds of things are going to be valuable as well.
I can't disagree. You got to have every bit of information. I mean, even the littlest thing that you leave out is going to be the biggest to somebody else. So I completely understand that.
That's right. You don't really, pet parents, we're all quirky about what is important to us, mm-hmm. and every little bit is important.
It's totally true. I mean, some people prefer pet clothes on the dog or cat, and some people are completely against it. But, that's what makes it all unique.
Right. And some dogs and cats are against it or for it too.
Yeah, some of them are really against it, but boy, I've seen some that just love to be dressed up. I mean, it is kind of funny. Now, to kind of go, a little bit simplify it for everybody, and using the app, adding your pet to the app it really is very simple. You put in their date of birth if you have it, or the adoption date, what gender they are. And the one thing that really was very important to me, which I even mentioned it the last time, was the fact that it wasn't just the dog and cat. I mean, you have birds, you have fish, you have reptiles. You really, and of horses, as you mentioned, you really made a point to put as much into it so that you didn't leave people out. And again, what's important to one pet parent may not be to the other, but if they exclude it, well, then they feel left out. And you covered that. Type of breed, color of fur, picture. I mean, it was brilliant. You covered every aspect, and I thought that was great.
Yeah, I know we have a few ferret owners who use the app as well. So it's not just dogs and cats, as you say. So I know we have some active users from who own ferrets. And something we're going to also add, we got this from talking to, we're recently starting to begin partnerships with some veterinarian practices. And, they talked about needing the more information you have, the better for them when you go to a vet visit. In fact, there's more and more vet companies that are doing house calls, so having information when they come to your house call already in the app of what's going on with your pet recently is important. But one of the things they mentioned in the profile is, when you're adding a pet is also allergies. They'd like to see that more upfront as part of your standard profile. So we'll be adding that for the dog and the cat for sure as well.
See how great it is that we had to re-record? These were things that we didn't even talk about. It was like we had a test run before. It was just one of those, we'll do it.
We've been talking to more of these veterinarian practices because we're hoping to expand this well-informed pet that's there for you as a pet parent and a consumer, but we're building it out so that it's also what we call white label, where the veterinarian practices can offer the same functionality, but in terms of something that's more relatable for a veterinarian practice. So we're going to have, we're hoping to expand where you'll see a lot of veterinarians offering this as a front-end product for pet parents, because the veterinarian world is all about the back-end system. But when you have more and more people businesses doing like house calls and other things that are more mobile, and other services, there's more and more Uber-like services for pets. The idea of having this value add for the pet parents so they are able to feel good about the experience and the information that's being shared is useful. And then every time you talk to a veterinarian, the more information they have ahead of time, the better. So we're working on that, and we're also expanding some partnerships with some nonprofits that work with shelters.
Which is always
shelters
helpful.
can use this. Exactly. So I always have this in mind, but it's very hard for me, one-on-one, to work with shelters, but I'm working with nonprofits that work with lots of shelters. That makes it an easier channel and a more effective channel for shelters to start using this. And the idea is basic health information, that profile information, the shot information gets stored, but also notes for the volunteers who are taking care of these animals as they come in. Everyone then has the same information they're sharing, that it's not just a scribbled note, which is really very common for how people share. I come in as a volunteer, some other volunteer left. What's going on with, Shirley the Cocker Spaniel? I know because everyone is putting those notes in and sharing the same information within the app. So it's helpful for a shelter in that regard. And then when an adopter rescues their pet, all the relevant information would get transferred to that new pet parent. So the idea is that that digital record basically carries through from as early as possible in the pet's life through their entire life.
Which is helpful.
We're starting to see that happen. Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's that's where you start seeing the power of this, is when you start seeing the information starting to get populated in whatever form it takes. Then you start getting the full story of your pet. And then when you think of where this can go in the future, when we start understanding trends and habits of some of the information you're putting in, then we'll understand better ways to, foresee certain aspects of your pet that you would not necessarily foresee, about diet changes and health changes and reminders, not just with vaccinations, but other aspects based on the patterns you're seeing from the behavior and activities that your pet is going through.
And what's interesting, especially with shelters, and having a foster dog right now, we see things that obviously as fosters and relate them to potential adopted parents. We see the fact that maybe they're other dog aggression, or we see that they don't work well with or live well with other cats. And these are great little tidbits for different pet parents to have with them. Or even, for example, you take your dog to a boarding facility, and for the people that work there, yeah, you've given them the information, but they have, sometimes 20, 30, 40 dogs there. And it's going to go, by the wayside. If they have that information at their disposal, you can limit any kind of problems. That's very helpful.
So one of my advisors on the app is one of the more noted dog trainers in the city in New York here. And she had talked about how helpful it is to have that information ahead of time. And she has a lot of clients who leave their pet with her for some special training that isn't just like with a pet parent. And she needs to know about behavior issues. And and if she gets that ahead of time, because she'd get notified of different behavior changes, you can have a little bit more activity in understanding how to socialize the dog, for example. Or if, as happens occasionally, not often, she needs to take the dog to a vet, and the pet parent isn't there, then she will have that history available to her as well. So there's a lot of circumstances, as you're describing, where that's understanding those quirks and nuances and special issues about one's pet. Imagine, more pets are getting or living longer but they have more chronic illnesses because pet care is getting better. So, but you also have more complicated health issues, and that also can be important and tricky for any type of situation where you need to track that information. And then if someone is, you drop it off at a daycare, or a pet sitter is coming in, having that information handy will be extremely vital and important, very vital if something happens to happen and you're not around. It's always important to know and have your pet being taken care of in the right way for those unusual circumstances when you're not with your pet. And And so I think the app has shown to be very helpful in those circumstances.
It's interesting and kind of funny. I mean, I remember last time we talked. I mean, you had so much going on, and it was such a great app then. But in just the few months it's been, you've improved it, and we're able to actually get connected with really good people to even come up with other ideas and be able to brainstorm. I mean, I gotta commend you. I told you the last time we talked, I loved what you've done. I have it on my phone, and the thing is that you've improved it in such a short time. Usually this takes a lot longer than just a couple months to improve an app or any kind of service, and you've done it in a record time.
Thanks. We like to think we're nimble here and adaptable, and we've gone through a lot of through our limited financial resources at this stage. We found some good creative ways to get feedback. We got a really great, I mentioned I think earlier, a really great usability review of our app to know what to focus on and to know what people care about. They interviewed around 40, 50 users of our product, which is actually a lot for any usability review, really. And it was like a detailed user survey, and that was really fulfilling in getting the feedback to really, I feel very good about their conclusions based on the research they did, for example, and that's reflected in what we have and where we're going as well. And I think it's gotten a little easier to explain what we're doing. On the surface, I think it sounds like, oh, this is a simple idea or a simple app. It's not always easy to explain what this is about because people don't think about it enough. That's true, again, with startup ideas in general. But I think that we've gotten very good at understanding what the real essence of the important value of aspects of our app that people would care about is there. So I think we've gotten a lot of lessons learned over the, since we talked last. And we've expanded our approach, our network, and, and frankly, from a business opportunity, more business partnerships has definitely been something that wasn't as much of a focus in March as it is now, because our product is becoming, more complete as at least, as I said, we can go pretty far in doing all sorts of things with this, but for the basic important functionality, it's already, gotten that value. And I think, the people we're talking to are starting to see that too.
I've always been one, and I think I even mentioned this the first time, I've always been one of those people that enjoy new startups. It's a little bit different now when I look at what you've done. You were at the, early stages. Now you're kind of like that baby bird who's out of the nest, learned how to fly. And really, it's a proud moment to be able to say, yeah, I was able to talk to this guy when he was, just really getting out there, and I really loved it, and I thought that was the greatest thing ever. And just to see your growth is great, and to see that you're being able to partner with the right people, you're being able to get this out there. And, when we talked the other day, you were like, oh, and you kind of gave me an update on something else that was going on, and I was like, really? Oh my gosh, I thought I read it, and I read this one thing about where you did the New York Expo, and I thought that was really cool. And if you want to talk about that, that really was interesting, and
yeah,
of course read about that.
No, absolutely. So one of the things I did as a deliberate way to try to get more recognized or noticed is through meetups. Meetup, is a technology platform where you can just basically meet up about anything, an in-person kind of meetup. That's what it does. So I took over maybe around March, it might have been, this New York City Pets and Technology meetup that had maybe a couple of hundred users. It was from I took it over because a startup that started it, it just takes a lot of time to run events, but I thought it would be a good avenue to get out there and get my name noticed more. So I took it over 6 months ago. It was at 200 to 300 members. We're at literally 1,000 members now. So it's grown ridiculously over the last few months, and this is just New York City. But what it is technologists who love pets, entrepreneurs or petrepreneurs who have their own kinds of startups, small businesses, small brick and mortar businesses like some groomer businesses and pet shop, gift shop type places, all basically networking and mingling together. So it's a professional kind of networking meeting, although they're always dog friendly. And we've had different panels. We've had panels on how to use social media marketing. We had actually, because it's gotten such a centralized community here, people like Purina and Mars have reached out to tap into this market of innovators, which is essentially what a lot of this audience is. And they've shared their thoughts and have been promoting startup and innovation ideas with all of us as well. So this has become a really nice way to build it. So I can say very, proudly that, I've really built up this community of pet technologists in New York, which no other part of the country has this kind of community that's so tight-knit that has access and can meet and mingle and share ideas. We usually show off a whole bunch of us show and tell tables of these different startups when we do these events every month to 2 months. So they've been very successful and has definitely attracted some attention within the industry. And Well-Informed Pet, our app is at the heart of that. So it's been great. And so if any of your listeners are in the tri-state area, just go to meetup.com and look up NYC Pet Tech and join it if you haven't. And the events are usually, I usually do it for some profit, so it doesn't cost much, but whatever money we make goes to a nonprofit, a rescue organization, and such. So they should sign up and go and do it as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been great.
And can you mention publication that's coming out next week? Can you talk about that, or is that kind of still?
No, I mean, there's a magazine called, I think it's called Pets and Lifestyles, and it's doing a feature on the best pet technology apps of the last, for the year, and so a number of them are part of the pet technology community in New York, and Well-Informed Pet is one of them. So we're pretty proud of being recognized as having one of the best pet apps. I mean, I always thought so because it's about the well-being of your pet that we focus on. So that's going to come out next week.
That's just amazing. That is amazing. I'm looking forward to actually seeing that. Is there anything else that we didn't cover?
I think we covered it pretty well. I mean, there's, just as from a business perspective, the trend of people treating their pets as children, and this app is really keeps that in mind, because just like children have so many people who can take care of it, more and more we have so many people taking care of their pets. And if you travel, I mean, it really fits in for you're just adopting and getting on board and owning a pet for the first time. If you travel with your pet or leave your pet behind, if you have a pet with complicated health issues or an elderly pet, all of these use cases are really in line with being perfect for you want information in a central place to share with all the people who take care of it, your extended family and your any caretaker. So that's really just the summary of it. So I think that's really, that's really all I have to say on that. I think it speaks for itself.
It does. It does. And, it's something that everybody should have on their phone. I mean, there's just no real reason why you wouldn't. That's always been my takeaway from it. Well,
I 100% agree.
I look forward to seeing more with you. I mean, like I said, even when I mentioned the whole situation that happened, I'm like, but I'm so glad I've been seeing your name. I've been seeing things coming up, and I'm really excited to see this grow into one of the best apps that are available on Android and on iTunes. So thank you for being back with us and, doing this again. I really appreciate it.
And check out WELLINFORMEDPET.com. That's the other thing to live out. How do you find out about us? Go to WELLINFORMEDPET.com. But yeah, I totally appreciate this, and yeah, we're totally excited about where we're going and what the future lies for this. It's no doubt.
I'm totally happy for you. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. I really do appreciate it.
No, thanks again for having me again.
I'm Chris Green. Have a pet-tastic week. Bye-bye, everybody.